and each of us tells ourselves stories.
Narratives shape our behavior. This idea is powerfully captured in the 2024 Simpsons Christmas special. Come on, all ye faithful, which you can watch exclusively on Disney Plus now. So today I'm here with narrative life coach Jim Karwish. Jim, say hello.
Hello.
And artistic theologian Ross Boone. Ross, say hello.
Hey guys.
We're here to discuss a few scenes from this awesome two-part Simpsons special, narrated by illusionist Darren Brown. The scene we're about to watch and comment on is preceded by Darren staging a situation where Gil feels brave. So he's trying to make him feel brave so that by saving this baby, which is all staged, but he doesn't know it, he can feel like a hero. And this will give him the courage to call his estranged family during this Christmas season, which he is avoiding doing. So this intervention is successful, and the clip we're about to watch is right after that moment happens. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to watch this clip.
Is trying to summon the courage to call his estranged family before Christmas, but he's running out of time. What Gil needs is a boost of confidence, a chance to be a hero. Cue runaway baby carriage.
Help! My baby carriage is slipping out of my hands!
My family doesn't want to hear from me.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, but what about your... Hey, he's okay.
Yes, you saved him. You're a hero.
I am?
And just like that, Gil felt brave, strong, a man of action.
Would you excuse me? Bonnie, it's Gil. That is. It's good to hear your voice too, honey. Right, no, honey. I would love to spend Christmas with you and the kids. Sure, I could pick up a tree. Actually, I already have one.
Not your stupid costume.
No, that's not what I was... I'll go to the tree lot. Christmas with the fam. Ha-cha-cha.
For Gil, being a colossal failure was the story he'd been telling himself. And each of us tells ourselves stories. Stories about who we are.
Disco Stew is into free verse poetry. Also,
Stories that limit who we can be.
I don't have an anger problem. Anger helps me punch.
Some stories are complicated.
Back then, hockey was played on sand, and the puck was a lightly broiled clam.
Hey, Jim, first reactions.
I mean, it's obviously for comedic effect, and it was done so sloppily with the watermelon and everything, but it does serve the example perfectly.
Hey, Ross, first reactions.
There's a lot of insight there. I'm starting to think about like, oh man, I think I need to reassess how to get out of my slump, how to tell myself a good story.
All right, now he's gonna talk about Homer Simpson's story, and this is a little bit longer clip. Feel free to chime in as it's proceeding. I think it's about 40 seconds, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
The story Simpson keeps telling himself is that he is bad at choosing gifts, which is why he lets his wife Marge do all the Christmas shopping.
Well, that was a bust. Apparently the Gap is just for tramps now. I'll watch the bags while you shop.
Oh, but I suck at presents.
I can't do all the shopping. You have to buy a present for me.
Do you like any of this stuff?
I have enough cufflinks.
Told you I suck.
We followed Homer and soon learned that he did, in fact, suck. He started with a reasonable choice, a journal. Then the second guessing began.
Oh, what if Marge doesn't have innermost thoughts? Lingerie? Too sexual. Book of Sudokus? Not sexual enough. Bowling ball? Oh, we already did that.
What concerned me was how savagely Homer berated himself.
Oh, I'm the worst. I make people sad. I should die. And they should donate my body to a crappy medical school where they study my brain for why I suck at buying gifts.
Jim, first reactions.
Wow, the intrusive thoughts and the automatic negative thoughts that Homer is experiencing there is I mean, this is a great illustration. This should be used to teach, I think.
Yeah. Ross, how about you? Thoughts?
Yeah, I was first thinking like, okay, how do we gain those thoughts about ourselves? Sometimes it is from experiences and they're well informed and those help us decide what we are good at and what to pursue. But perhaps a lot of times it's really limiting us from exploring new opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking as we're recording this, it's January, and I'm thinking because of Homer's narrative, he thinks he's a terrible gift giver. We're like a little bit too late to help any of those people who feel that tell themselves that same story.
Yeah. Oh, well, if you're going to master the narrative of gift giving, this is the appropriate amount of runway that you need for next Christmas.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
You got some work to do between now and then.
Yeah. Now, Jim, this is what you do. You are the person that helps people actually understand these narratives, and as silly as this is actually a real thing. And the language of humans is story. So just kind of dive into the deeper layer here of that narrative piece that this, if you haven't seen the episode, I would definitely recommend everyone check it out, because it's the whole episode is this idea, and it's 40 minutes of untangling these narratives, and for the city of Springfield to help them bring back their Christmas cheer, because they're all in despair. But anyways, Jim, tell us, just kind of dive into a little bit to the deeper layer here.
Well, I really wish that he was one of my clients, because he's a perfect case. He's doing all of the things you can do wrong in relationship to his existing narrative. So he's in a place where all of the gifts that are available for him to buy are the wrong gifts. Like if he went to the right store on the suggestion of one of Marge's friends, or there's so many things he could do to work on this narrative. But at some point in time, I think, just knowing the character of Homer, he probably weaponized his incompetence. He basically said, I'm not good at gift giving, so don't expect anything from me. And that made his life easier. But now he's being harmed by his own, right? He's causing himself harm because of this narrative that the narrative has to change in order for him to go. But he certainly isn't going to find what he needs in that store, and he certainly isn't going to change his feelings about the gifts that he could choose by examining all of his previous bad choices. He's reinforcing that same narrative. So whatever happens next, if Darren is going to do something that helps him, it's going to have to be there's got to be something different.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the episode shifts into, as he works with Marge to create the narrative to then change Homer. And Homer he literally starts to believe that he's Santa Claus. And so then he becomes Santa Claus, and he lives that out, and he grows the beard, and he's given gifts, and he turns into like this whole different person.
Yes, that is exactly what I would expect for the Simpsons to do with that.
Yeah. So Ross, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about how powerful, when we are stuck in those narratives like that, to see ourselves as like story makers or part of a story, so that like, okay, if there is something that I really suck at, the way that I can become part of a heroic story is to aim towards something better and then go through the difficult process to change. And if you don't see the end in sight of like, okay, I can be the hero of this story, or that I can make this story great, all that suffering and all the difficulty just has no purpose, and you just don't have any longevity or perseverance to make it through it. So the power of saying, okay, my life is a story and I am aiming to make it good, so all the difficulty to get there is worth it.
Yeah. So Jim, you mentioned the word weaponizing. I can kind of see how people hide behind stories, or they weaponize the story.
Yeah, once you create that conclusion, that feeling of the story is this, and there's this feeling that the ... after that will just be more of the same forever, infinitum, until we've passed.
Yeah.
Right? I interrupted your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so that was what I was wondering, is like, sometimes the story is maybe something like Homer might really feel like he's a bad gift giver, but if he just wants to be lazy, maybe he's just really lazy and he just wants to not do it. And so he uses that as a cover story. And so sometimes it could be both too, right? One or the other. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the opposite. Let's just go to the other end, right? A good gift giver is not going to be somebody who just naturally has this outpouring of the ability to choose gifts. They're doing something different that's accomplishing the goal of finding gifts, right?
Yeah.
And there's some intentionality behind that. So maybe the person who is a good gift giver is someone who listens better than Homer, because he's not so great at listening, as we've seen in many episodes.
Yeah.
But also, if he thinks that getting to be a good gift giver means that the other person who is doing it right, they can be lazy and still give good gifts,
Yes.
then of course he thinks he's bad at gifts because he's not putting the energy into it. And so as long as he believes that it's just not worth the energy because I'm not good at gift giving, he's never going to do the bare minimum that gets you to a good gift.
Yeah.
And so I'm imagining, I haven't seen the episode, but I imagine what happens next is he does do the bare minimum to get to a good gift, and then he recognizes that and that he can do it again, and then he becomes Santa Claus.
Yeah. So for those that are like those that feel like they are bad gift gifters, I want to give you a little advice here. I can be both a good gift giver and a bad gift giver, but my identity is not a good or a bad one. It's just how am I playing that out? And so I have been a bad gift giver in the past and a good gift giver. And one of the ways, particularly with my wife, that I do that is I actually, Jim talked about, like, this episode can hopefully over the next 12 months help you become a good gift giver. I'm going to give you a little tip here. Start picking up things throughout the year that your wife says and make note of them. So I have like an Evernote, and I just collect all of the either ideas she gives me or ideas I see. And when I'm gift giving, I like to get her things that she actually told me she wants.
Nice.
And then also take a little bit of risk and give her things I think she wants, but she may not, and it's like a risk. So I like to give her both, so that way I kind of cover my bases and get her something she wants, and also be willing to take that risk. But that idea of the identity tied into it, right? I can move back and forth, and that can shift. So Ross, what are your thoughts on that?
I was just thinking of the power of someone telling a story that so inspires me to become a good gift giver. Like, I love working in systems into my life so that I can become a better self. So just hearing your story and how, like, I could have watched that as a cartoon or if we had talked over coffee and I'd heard that story, I would be internalizing this, like, oh, that is a hero that I want to be, and realize, like, whether it turned into a direct application or down the line when I was having these tension points, that subconsciously came to mind. And I told myself, like, oh no, someone told me the story before. Jason might come to mind. I'll be like, I know how to do this. There is more than just doomed to stay bad gift giver forever.
Yeah. You're not stuck there.
Yeah.
Now Nelson, he says, I don't have an anger problem, and he's like punching the guy. So Jim, like, what are your thoughts on that, and like denial as a narrative?
Yeah, and I think, what would he consider to be an anger problem, right? So if he processes what he's doing, I'm working on a book, Your Untangled Narrative, and one of the cases is use Harry Potter as a reference, and I use Dudley, one of the villains of the story. I just basically rewrote it as if he was the hero. How would he consider himself to be the hero of this story? And he keeps the house together, is what I decided. He keeps things moving. His father, his mother, everything. If he's not being firm and saying what he wants and all these types of things don't keep moving. So he's pushing things. So I would say it could just be blank denial, which wouldn't require a narrative at all. He could just say, I don't have a problem. Or he could have a narrative that what he's doing is good in some way to him and to the people around him.
That's good, yeah.
I think we do
Ross,
have to know.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that, like, what is a good story for one person may not be a good story for another person. Like, I imagine so many marriages are like, I tell my story in my mind, and my wife telling a story in her mind, and we're both heroes of our own story. And I'm like, well, I did this for her. I did this for her. And she's like, well, I did this for him. I did this for him. And it's really easy to not see the other person's story very well.
Yeah.
So I imagine that, and I'm not saying one is right or the other one is right, because I think stories are so manifold that, like, every story can be, as long as you're working hard and it's leading to transformation of character, there's a heroic story there.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, so I'm going to give you each a chance to just say your final thoughts on the idea or the episode. Ross, you start us off.
Okay. I was just impacted and reminded that the power of casting a story, a heroic story, that people can see and realize that there's hope for their life as well.
Yeah. Jim, final thoughts?
I think that was a great example that is now put out there for a lot of people to absorb and to recognize, because The Simpsons is wildly popular and has so many viewers. There's an opportunity there for change that wasn't necessarily provided to people from other avenues. So The Simpsons doing that episode is actually a pretty cool way of giving something to its audience that's pretty powerful and entertaining and funny.
Yeah. It was an incredible episode. It's on Disney Plus. Go check it out. This has been a spontaneous conversation on the Share Life podcast. If you liked it, if you're interested in us doing more of them, post the clips you're interested in the comments or email us and let us know what you want us to chat about next. Let's say goodbye. Ross, tell us who you are, what you do, and how people can contact you or how they can find you online.
Boone. I built an app called Creature Habits app. It's a Christian devotional app. It'll help you find your story.
Cool. Jim, tell us who you are, what you do, and your website.
I'm Jim Karwish. I'm a narrative coach, and you can find me at untanglednarrative.com.
Awesome. I'm Jason Scott Montoya. You can find me at jasonscottmontoya.com, and I'm an amplifier of influence and income for small businesses.